So this was Ben taking black and Eric taking white. Yep, all looks good so far. No mistakes. Maybe a slightly questionable move with this white move at R12. I'd probably be more inclined to play some sort of corner move here, or maybe something like this. Actually,
Well, I
would be
considered
interesting.
the pincer at H3 because of the D10 stone.
So the problem with the pincer is, I think it's not going to end up being a particularly great result for you because black's going to have a nice formation with this O3 stone. So I think these stones end up working quite nicely together.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
uh, and also, I guess the thought being that this is kind of what you're expecting to happen.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's.
But this is quite fine for black too, because these two stones, or I should say this H3 stone, is not that helpful because there's no territory to be made for white here, right? It's not really it's really just sealing this group in, but this makes this side very boring. Like there's no territory to really be had here. And with black getting a move like B17, it's going to be a lot harder for white to get territory here. So black's taken four very large corners, and white really only has one territory that has a weak point here and a bunch of weak points on the outside. So black's gotten four corner territories, and white's gotten one side territory with maybe 8 to 10 points here. So I would probably give the advantage a little bit to black.
Okay.
Um, for me, what I would probably do is something like this, maybe F4, with the idea being that this side is pretty low, and white stones here are at least working a little bit a little bit better together. And then white could
Yeah,
probably.
F4 is interesting. It's not a move I think of unless there's a double pincer. Then I always think of it, but I don't tend to think of it when there's nothing else there.
It's because historically we've thought of it as a not great move, but I think since AI we've become more okay with playing it. We've kind of reevaluated and said, okay, actually this is an acceptable result. Similar to E3, this is also something that we would historically not have played very
Right, we
often.
didn't used to play it because white black gets
Um,
that position.
but but in this particular situation, because these stones are three spaces away, it's actually not that bad because there's a weak point at M3 and there's a weak point at H3 as well. And so because of that, we're kind of okay with giving black this formation on the lower side.
Wouldn't black play high though here or
Yeah,
no?
the problem is there's still this weakness here,
I
right?
see. Okay.
So something like this might happen, and so white would get to expand its corner, and black's position here also wouldn't be that great. So it's not the only variation we can play, but it's kind of thinking about it this way. I don't want to play a side move if I can avoid it. I'd rather still focus on
Yeah,
this
the
corner.
reason I came up with R12 is, it looked like the move that expands me and limits black. And likewise, if black played there, it expands black and limits white. So it looked like one of those double value moves.
Yeah, and I think you're right to a certain degree, but I will say, let's say that black does play here. There's still that kind of three spaces away that you can invade upon later on. So I wouldn't be too worried. If all white does is just you know maybe white comes out and plays here, or even kicks here. Um, you can make black a little bit over concentrated and get this territory here. So I'm not too worried for white in this position.
Okay.
And I would again still rather focus on that corner territory.
Okay.
Um, Double approach. Yep. All this is okay. We don't typically see E3 anymore. More often than not, what you'll see is this. Um, something along these lines would occur. The reason why we don't see this type of move at E3 is it ends up giving black very nice shape here, and white's position is pretty ugly. You have two empty triangles here. So the number of liberties that white has is not great. There's still a cutting point at C4. And if you play a move at G5, which feels very natural trying to expand both sides, you make black's position on the lower side very strong as well, and you still owe an extra move over here.
You said
So
two empty triangles. I see one. Where's the second one?
one and then two. One empty triangle here, two empty triangles here.
No, but the other one's not empty.
Uh, because you're a tarring. Either way, I mean, we can whether it's we can define it however we want, but it's very ugly shape. I think we can clearly say
Yeah,
that.
it's not a great shape.
And you still owe a move because of the C4 weakness, right?
Right.
Um, so I would more often than not probably get rid of this one from your vocabulary, like your Go dictionary, because I think it's more often than not going to lead to a worse result. Probably better to take the corner. And black's gonna struggle to cut directly because there's always this cut at G3. So black would have to come back and protect over here first, in which case white can play over here.
Um, if black pushed in, instead of E3, if black pushed in right away, or is that equivalent?
It's not going to end up being a particularly great result because white's going to be able to live in the corner. And black has not much territory here and a weak group over here as well. So I would say this is probably going to be a little bit better of a result for white.
Okay.
Obviously, there's tons of variations here, and it may not be the only variation that occurs, but I think it's probably a little bit too aggressive right now.
Okay.
And certainly, also white could just live here too directly, and you still have this G3 cut that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
I would say this move by black is probably a little questionable. If I were black here, I would push up here. It works nicely with kind of building up a low to high position here. So you have high stones over here and a low position here. And it also forces white to make kind of an extension that it doesn't want to make or something like this, where now the white stones are really over concentrated. So yes, this stone is definitively dead, but it's very over concentrated. If I were going to play anything locally over here as black, I would be looking at this, but I think that this is a little bit too small right now. I would probably be more inclined to play like this. Well, sorry, first push here. Oops, excuse me. Black plays here, plays here, play here, play here, play here. And again, black has really strong territory in the upper left, good territory in the upper right, good territory in the lower right, good position here. And all white really has to go off of is kind of a very easily invadable position over here, right? Because even if white blocks, you can still kind of reduce quite nicely. And so maybe this becomes 40 points. This is another 15 points. Whereas I think black has at least 10 to 20 in the upper left, an additional 10 to 15 in the right, additional 10 to 15 in the lower right, and additional 10 to 15 in the lower left. So I would say black probably has closer to like 65 points, whereas white maybe only has about 55, 60.
Okay.
I think this move is probably a little bit slow. I would be more inclined to attack both of these stones as opposed to just the one of them. So if black connects here, then white can try to capture this whole group. And again, this is how white wants to use its thickness, right? White doesn't want to just capture this one stone on the third line. White wants to capture everything here. So if white wants to attack more locally, this would be the way to do it, in my opinion.
I think I was actually thinking defensively with B6. Like it didn't look like I had room in the corner for two eyes yet. And,
well, you don't need to make two eyes in the corner yet because you can always run out, right?
For now, yeah. But I'm assuming black's going to run out there.
But that means you've made, like, let's think about it this way, right? Let's say, this here,
like black might play like F7, or something like that.
Again, black's not alive here yet.
I was thinking F7 instead of G7. That's F8. I was thinking F7.
Sorry, F7.
That's E8. I'm still thinking F7 instead of E8.
I think that goes to show that I would not play this move if it took me that many tries to get there. I think the problem is it's a little bit too small. White's going to push again. Black will make
right now. White still doesn't have two eyes.
but black doesn't have two eyes either, right?
Okay.
Black is running in a much worse position than white is,
right.
And white can always play here later on and be almost alive. Right, it's obviously black can play here and make some exchanges, but white's going to get to play on the outside. So this white group, to me, feels very strong. It would take a couple moves before you can play it, before you need to come back and really protect it. So playing here and only attacking this one stone at C6 seems a little questionable.
Yeah, I guess it never occurred to me to think of b6 as only attacking the one stone. I just never thought of it that way. I totally agree with you. Don't attack just one stone. But I wasn't thinking of it as attacking one stone.
But again, if like think about this, right? D7, if white wants to jump out and play here, this is a much better result than if we were to do this, right? This is a much nicer result for white. Or sorry, keeping first is a much nicer result. So even if black just says, you know what, take the one stone, that's fine, right? This is already a nice result for white.
Yeah, I'm assuming black would connect if I peek.
Yeah. In which case, then you get to make this a really nice fight for white.
Yeah, that looks good for white.
Something like this. So let's keep going. Again, for the same reason, I would say that this move by black is also pretty small. It's one stone. Probably better to play something like this and treat these stones a little bit more lightly, try to make shape, maybe aim at a C10 or a C11 weakness later on, and potentially aim at the invasion points over here. But I think playing here right now is just, it's telegraphing that you care too much about these stones. And the problem is that white's going to be able to surround all of them, right? Maybe not kill all of them, but at the very least surround them. Maybe a little bit small. I might be trying to, I think this is probably okay for white, but I think that I would be trying to maybe surround on a larger scale to a certain degree.
Well, I assumed if I didn't play like the C9, black would slide at B10, and then it feels like nailing Jello to a tree if white tries to attack this.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that white would be able to cut it off pretty easily, right? Even if black plays here, you can cut it off. Okay. So it's not to say that your move is, it's ridiculous or unheard of, but I for me, just capturing one or two stones or just capturing territory and not putting pressure on this really weak group here seems counterintuitive to what you want to do with this thick white position here.
I guess I thought it was putting pressure on. That's my problem, I guess.
Yeah, so now black's actually able to get out quite nicely here. It's even though this is a bit heavier shape than I would have necessarily wanted for black in this position, it's really difficult for white to get a good attack, because if you push in this direction, black's going to push this way. If you push in this direction, that's going to put more pressure on this group, which, as you mentioned, doesn't have two eyes yet. So even though it might not work immediately, depending
also,
on how
there's a cut at D11 that I was worried about too.
D11. Oh, this cut here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the end of the world, but yeah, it's certainly problematic. I think if white were to play this way, white would extend here, and then the cut's probably not that big a deal, because black can push this way, and it becomes a fight. So there is certainly a weakness that exists there, though. I think that the cut at D11 is definitely something you want to be mindful of.
So the way I did play was because I was worried about the cut.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah, no, I think this D12 stone makes sense then. But again, it's a very easy position for black to escape in. Black's territory has not changed at all, right? Black's territory is still about 65 points, and white's entire left side has been broken. So we can very clearly say this is a good result for black. Yeah, and black now even gets to attack this weak white group, right? So this is great for black. I think if I were black here, I'd probably do something like this: take the corner, threaten to invade inside. Looking at the territory, black's probably already ahead by 20. White really only has about 15 to 20 points here, maybe a little bit more. Only about 5 points here, and maybe 15 points here. So maybe white has 40, maybe 45 with Comey. Black has at least 10 to 15 in this corner, at least another 10 to 15 down here. So we're looking at 30 or so at the bottom, another 10 to 15 here, and another 10 to 15 here. So I would say black's easily ahead by 15. And the problem is there's no real weak group for black to attack severely, for white to attack severely. Like, this group is still pretty strong. So this would be a very good game for black, which is actually, it looks like this is what happened. So this looks okay. I'm kind of confused by ignoring this move here, right? Because I guess the idea being is that if you play elsewhere,
I think I was probably sensing what you just said about white being behind, and I was trying to play in all the places that I thought would limit black.
well, it's not just about limiting black. You actually need to get territory, right? So playing here is maybe a little bit questionable right now because it's not actually getting white territory. But what
Yeah,
it
I didn't even see where white could make territory.
exactly, right? So I think that white's in a tough position right
Yeah, yeah,
now.
I agree.
So I think playing something like this and trying to attack, it's tough. I'm not really sure if there's a great singular way of going about it. I think that this is obviously not a small point on the board, but if black were to just calmly take territory here, I don't know that white would be able to come back from this. So because of that, we can't play that move, right? We can't just play the natural moves that you would play in a relatively even game. We have to play something a little more aggressive. So maybe what we do is we target, some sort of weakness here. We look at the weakness of this cut here. So that if black plays something like this, then you can
Maybe
run out
white
and
should have considered M3 to aim at the P2.
M3 to aim at P2. P2 unfortunately doesn't really kill. And more often than not, I think black will probably also jump up here, right? Which basically gets rid of all the agi of P2. So for me, I would focus more on the weakness between this H4 stone and this G5 stone. Excuse me, the J6 stone, than the weaknesses in this lower right group, because I don't think there really are too many weaknesses in the lower right group.
Okay.
But I think it probably ignoring after black plays O5 is a little questionable though, because what you're basically inviting yourself to be attacked.
So where would be the next move for white if he doesn't ignore?
Probably just connect. Something like this, I think would be fine. The attack on this group over here isn't that strong, or we can just maybe play lightly and again aim at the weakness over here to a certain degree. If black plays over here, you can treat this stone as light, and it doesn't really matter that black got a Panuki here because you can potentially capture back. So yeah, maybe something like this might be okay. What I'm afraid of happening here is that white's just going to have too many weak groups here, right? Black plays here, white plays here, black plays here, white plays here, black cuts, and is now trying to either attack these stones over here or attack these stones over here.
Right.
Just because you're behind doesn't mean you can start playing recklessly. Milan, I think that is. Well, let me ask a question. Eric, do you have any more questions about the game before I jump off this one?
I guess you stopped right before my little invasion in the upper right.
Oh, this R16,
which looked like maybe I was finally starting to do something.
Unfortunately, I think R16 is maybe too premature. I don't think you have enough strength in the area for it to really work too well. And I think even if all black needs to do is give you the territory. Oops, excuse me. And already black gets compensation by weakening the position over here and kind of building up some strength over here. So I think it's not a particularly, it's not horrendous, but I think that you're not necessarily getting as much as you think you are, because I think black is going to get compensation on the outside. Usually you'll play this move or something in this area if you have a stone instead of at R12, you have it at R13, because what you don't want to have happen is for white to for black to have this move at R13, right? Imagine if the stone was at R13 instead of R12, black would have to connect back at R14, which is a much better result for white.
Oh, okay.
So that's typically when you'll see those types of moves, because it will do more to the it'll put less pressure on the white stones on the outside.